Just a background on why I talk about the topic. Part of my previous career was manager of the diversity program in the organization. And because my previous company, Sasol, globalized, and suddenly we were a very localized organization, and then we globalized, and we've got people in Germany, and we've got people in Houston, we've got people in South Africa, we've got people in the UK, and we bring them together in a work group, and it just, everything explodes. Big fight, nobody wants to work together, and it's like, whoa, what's happening here? So a lot of the stories that I will tell today is part of it is theory, but part of it is also just practical experiences on living with diversity that was suddenly introduced in the organization, and how did we use mentorship just to deal with the day-to-day very practical issues. So I will look at mentorship defined, and then I would look at a few drivers behind diversity management that we experienced. We thought that diversity is diversity, and how we manage it, and we discovered after a while, oops, there are really two streams in it, and we had to deal with both. Practical examples of mentorship, how we used it in the organization, and then one or two tools that we've used in the organization to deal with this concept of how do we guide people through dealing and managing in a diverse environment. So the first one is definition of co-mentorship. We started off, you mentors, experienced guy, mentor youngsters. And they should listen, and the old guy should just tell them what to do. It didn't work necessarily like that. We discovered, especially when there was different cultural groups coming into workplaces, that co-mentorship was powerful. And what was one of the things that was, there's a mutual beneficial relationship. We tried a lot of things. Formal mentorship programs, informal mentorship programs, and over the years we assessed, what's working, what's not, and I can't really tell you if a formal or informal approach worked best. But what we know, it was when that relationship is mutual beneficial for people, that mentorship relationship usually worked pretty well. Create understanding and comprehension of a situation that would not have happened if both parties have not been in a relationship. That was one of the things. It's just like, what's the difference between coaching, mentoring, and just be friends? It's interesting that we found that people valued it when there's something that happened in that relationship. When people meet and they develop a different understanding of the situation or management practices due to that relationship. And it was sort of a new level or a next level of information and competency that was created out of it. A lot was about appropriate response to the situation in diversity. It was not that one is right or wrong, but what we found is, and I will come back to the examples later on where I can explain that. But it's about the whole person, not about just a task. It's how I interface with people, how I communicate with people, how I deal with conflict, how I propose things. I remember our German colleagues came into Houston and they did the presentation like exact. Jawohl, done. And the American said, well, we want to talk about this. And the guy goes, what should we talk about? It's like not working. And it results usually in mutual respect. Absolutely, that at the end of the day, people would say, that was a meaningful relationship, and I can understand now and have respect for the different opinions. That's the 4 or 5 things that we found working well in the relationships. And I had a little one there, Asok, thank you by mentoring, someday you'll be just like me. I'm like, someone please drive it straight through my heart, and then you find out apparently I don't know what mentoring is. That sounds very typically of what we have experienced in our lives. Diversity. When a member of a group differ from each other by skills, knowledge, age, gender, ethnicity, physical capability, belief system, or even values. Because it was interesting when we talk about diversity, each organization will define it in each specific way. When we globalized at that time in the company, we found that it's not gender diversity, it's not age diversity, it's all of those sometimes. And they came in different packages. Usually there's what was interesting, mentoring, we try this mentoring story. And like most of the things in the human resources field, that we try strategically, we get a few early adopters, but what we found was interesting. It started and it became meaningful in the organization usually when there's an issue, when the diversity issues became dysfunctional. And then we noticed, when we started with the mentorship relationship, that was the trigger event. So when it was interesting, and why I'm saying that, we actually started looking for possible dysfunctional relationships of conditions in the organization, and we started proactively introducing the concept of mentorship. Because we came with, here's the solution, and then people say, well, we're not sick. Well, we just waited until they got the flu, and then we gave them the medicine, and it worked pretty well. So here's a few interesting things. What happened, and just a story. So we had camps in one of the countries where it was pretty warm and dry, and we had Korean people coming in and doing project work, and they were just appalled by the dirtiness of these camps. They explain about it and complain about it and want to strike and just were upset by it. And that specific people managing the camps was like, what's wrong? It was pretty okay. And it was interesting, when we discovered, when we went in with problem solving, it was that the Korean people have just a different lifestyle. A lot of them live very close to their floors. They sleep on the floors, they sit on the floor, so the floor is an integral part of their life and should be clean. And this warm climate camps, people walk with their shoes into the camp and it's dirty and there's dust and stuff. These people just can't live in those conditions. Interesting situation that we could bring in mentorship and co-mentorship to explain to the camp management staff and even the workforce, the managers in the operations. We use this situation to start with co-mentoring and understanding the different cultures there. The other one is the show of a food sold to an emirati. We had a very senior person and we did some work in Dubai, and he was German background, very exact and pretty, I'm going to say hard-assed. He went in for negotiations, and the next moment they kick him out. They just said, don't want to talk to this guy. And when we went in and tried to mitigate the situation, part of just how people would sit when they get warm, they would sit with their legs like this. And that's just a no-no situation. And we had to coach our people when we go in, bring some people from Dubai in and just talk about how do you do business in the Middle East and how do you do business in South Africa and Europe. Quite an interesting situation. And we had actually storytelling sessions going on that one. Eating by hand, very popular in India. It's food is just not something that you put in your stomach so that you can digest it. It's a social, nice experience. Again, we had people in camps. And some of the people just said, we don't want to eat with those guys. And we had to bring in mentors from both areas, and we had mentorship sessions, cultural mentorship sessions and storytelling where people discovered that what was the value of just how people socialize around food in the different cultures. Leaving a little food on a plate for Philippines, Jordanians and Egyptians. It's sort of one interesting thing again. We had a camp situation and the people would leave a little bit of food, and there were some other people from China, Japan and India, and they were just appalled by this. So how can you do this? It's just these people don't want to work with them. And it's just differences, because if you're in those countries, and you leave a little bit of food, if I'm correct in what they told us. Later we went in again and do some mitigation. Said, but it's sort of, you don't eat all the food, because the message to your host would be that they didn't feed you enough. So it's very respectful to leave a little bit. And the people from the other culture said, there's people dying from hunger. You just don't leave food on the table. Like, whoa, very interesting concept of little things that really became dysfunctional on how people work together. Personal hygiene. Oh man, I can talk about that for a long time, on just people wearing socks or not socks in Fort McMurray in winter. In the situation where there was people don't want to work together. Eye contact within the Western culture and some other cultures, eye contact between males and females. As a cue for sexual interest. We had a specific group coming in again, temporary foreign workers at that time, and there was a bit of uncomfortability with the staff, and they felt that maybe the people overstepped their boundaries. And when we talk about this, and we again learned our lesson, bring in co-mentorship and stuff, we realized that in most of the Western cultures, you look some people in the eye, and when the people that dished up the food, look respectfully people in the eye, and there was males in camps 3 months, 6 months, just interpret it very differently. My most popular one is a monochronic, the German versus polychronic American. There was always a German people in our offices in Germany, they like to focus, close their door, do their calculations, and be very organized. And the Americans have got the philosophy of an open door, not always everything stacked, and you can do different things. And if I'm on the phone and it's a crisis, and you just show to me that you want to talk to me, and I will hang up. Oh man. So our organization started this wonderful idea of bringing people from different groups, because it's a multinational organization. So we bring in people from Germany to head office, we bring in people from Houston to head office, we bring in people from Dubai to head office, and then we put a few Australians there, and we think, oh well, they're going to work well together. Oh yes, okay. It was just nearly a war on those things. And we actually started with having people, we appointed a few people, the German engineers that grew up in South Africa, that understand the culture there. They become mentors for our EITs that came in from Germany, and vice versa. So when we sent some of our people over, the first thing, we found somebody in the States that could mentor our EITs, because we rotated our EITs, and they got totally confused. When we take them, they come back to home base, and they don't know what they're anymore, because they just have to go to the lot of diversity experiences. However, when you decide what's a goal, you need to decide what is a goal with your diversity management. Here's the roadmap. So diversity problems focus on denial of differences between people. When we started with this, we find out that some areas people say, all the people are the same, you do the same, and don't be different. If you're in a room, you do like the Romans, and there's no acceptance of any differences. On the other side, there was problems where people were focusing so much on the differences and never on the commonalities. And you just do different approaches. When you talk about diversity management and coaching, you need to understand probably a little bit which is the situation. Because we found that it was, in some areas, it was really different. We send in people and they talk, let's talk about commonalities. And the people are like, there's no, we're all the same. And the issues are actually, you don't respect my different backgrounds. So no respect due to the need that, paint everybody with the same brush. Intervention should be focused on valuing the differences. And typical example is communication between Generation Z and silent generation. Diversity in age. So we've got this good group of engineers, came through the ranks the hard way, and that's how you learn. You do the work. You don't talk back, you don't challenge, you just shut up and you do it. And here's the new generation, they want to discuss, and they want to do social networking, and they want to challenge, and they want to collaborate in decision making, and it's just like these bunch of people will never run the company or bring in our own guys. And we had to talk about this differences in approach, and how people learn differently, and how you actually mentor and coach the teams. And then the problems where there's a difference only on the differences, or the focus on the differences. No respect due to prejudices and stereotypes. We know that one. I don't work with those guys because of this and this and this reason. And a lot of our interventions should focus on similarities and common ground. That you need to actually find out what is the common ground of the situation. Example is typically cultural values regarding safety. Where, again, one of the interesting areas was we brought in construction people. We procured, equipment that was manufactured in a certain area, and they break them down and they bring and they erect them in Canada. So we bring in the construction team with it, and 2 or 3 people stand on one ladder, doing this stuff. And it's not an issue. It's a different view on safety, and I want to get the job done. Just it's money. And people walked away and said, no, we're not taking responsibility. Take that team away. They're not coming on my side. And we had to really do a lot of work on just how people viewed. Okay, I should not spend too much time telling stories. I guess case study 1, just valuing the similarities. It was a multinational organization. I said we used mentorship for young people and new graduates. Mentorship was focused on finding common ground in expectations regarding workplace culture expectations, from employment, relationship, performance aspirations. Just bringing people in. It was sometimes, if you're in the States or if you're in South Africa, people from Europe and was viewed as just very different. And at the end of the day, young people and all the people in the world, they want to work, earn a living, get married, having offsprings, care for them, and then hopefully, care for the family, that the next generation is better off than the previous generation. And that's basic motivations of life. Mentors learn how people are motivated and how they set the same performance expectations. Mentees learn to find common ground and how to collaborate and challenge the paradigms and finding different methodologies and what anchor people in organizations. And what was interesting, what I want to explain with this one, we had an award on the annual President's Award function. End of the year, there was a best practices and a quality sort of award function, and we deliberately nominated people here so that they can, the co-mentorship, you had to send in your story of how co-mentorship helped the organization in the globalization strategy. And it was actually then part of that award function at the end of the day, so that people can just do this and feel it's value to the organization. Another one where we had valuing differences. It was a local organization in Canada, high number of temporary foreign workers, and it was interesting, it's in Canada. I thought we're relatively good in dealing with diversity, and we love all people, and all that kind of wonderful things. But it was not true. Co-mentorship to support assimilation of international staff, and to create organizational flexibility, to just deal with a little bit of different times and practices. Mentors got mentored on labeling behaviors appropriately and adopt styles to communicate appropriately, i.e. one of the issues was in some of the cultures, you just, as I said, you just don't look people into the eye. If it's a senior person, you don't look them in the eye because it's really like challenging. You look down and you respect the person, and you don't challenge them. You say, yeah, do you understand the safety rules? Yeah. And the people walk out of the door and the managers would just go berserk. These people are disrespectful, they don't understand, they didn't listen, they lied because they said yes. And it's just absolutely something totally different that we had to deal with. And mentees was coached to ask the questions, express differences, and apply work-safe practices. And say, and how do I come from a specific culture, and then now when I don't challenge my seniors, and in this workplace we have to challenge the seniors and say, that's unsafe work practice. I don't agree with it. I think we as a team need to deal with it. Because people went in and they start to work and it's unsafe. And there was incidents, and when you do the assessment afterwards, you find out that the team was knowing that it's an unsafe situation, but it was just not an understanding of how to deal with the situation. How we try to deal with it, we deal with multicultural potlucks. We had great fun. So we bring different foods, different wines. Every person had to bring food and music from their cultural background. And so we eat and explain the food and the music stuff. It was amazing how that just sharing. People became friendships, and that co-mentoring relationship between senior and junior staff in the organization started happening. Last one, second last one. Here's an interesting one: diversity awareness profile. We use this for our mentors, and it's Karen Stinson developed this in like 1991. It's an old tool, but it's a tool that we gave to mentors, and they do a self-assessment, and they can find out what is their sort of, are they naive, are they perpetuators, avoiders, change agents, or fighters. And we gave that to the mentors. They do self-assessment, and we at the social network sort of situation, and they would discuss what is the best way and how to become aware of themselves. And then we ask the mentees sometimes to give the mentorship or the mentors feedback on this. And it was interesting. It's not always the change agents that was the most valued by the mentees. It was the people where they could have this. There was creating some understanding. There was a correct response. You could help them to have appropriate response to the situation, and mutual respect that was developed. Sometimes it was, the mentor was quite a pretty tough guy and more a fighting style. The people was happy, but we used this one quite well. And this one, this was an interesting one. Ugardis did a scale on social distances. And this is just an example. You can do a lot of things, but it worked on the basis that how you measure how people would integrate. This is not more in short-term situations like in construction industry or camp life, but when there's a multicultural organization that you really want to bind together, where you use this and there's different scales, it actually starts asking people, will I marry a person from that diversity group? Will I socialize with that person? Will I be on the same bus as that person? Will I be in the same town? Will I be in the same province? And you actually get a measurement of social distance and how people, and then we use that information to actually start conversation in the organization on what is the barriers of that to that social distance. It's a tough instrument to use. I'm not sure some people find it sensitive information, and some people loved it. But a great tool to use if you want to do that. And that's it. I'm done.